would be very helpful if I turn myself off mute. Thank you for that so much, Ray and Gabby. So had it on mute because I had that nice music beforehand. Welcome to part 8 of our Lunch and Learn series, The Perfect Claim. This series has been all focused on from start to finish, adjusting a loss from literally starting your company and what your kind of systems should be set up to, all the way through the end of the claim, which we'll get to by part 12. Today, in part 8, we are going to talk about what you should be doing after you do the initial showing of a loss when you first present the claim. And really, the focus of this is going to be on negotiating the loss and how to negotiate properly and really get the best results as fast as possible for you and your insureds. We're trying a little bit of a different format today. As you can tell, it doesn't look exactly the same as it was before. Mario is actually all the way in a different room participating in this, but we wanted to try and resolve some lighting issues that would come up as the screen would change from that kind of newscaster look. We do want to get some feedback from you guys. So hopefully the sound is now working, but if you guys can provide some feedback, let us know if this format works better, if it's easier to follow, or if you liked the old kind of newscaster appearance with the TV in the corner and going through the slides that way. So hopefully this works well. Hopefully we're able to respond just as quickly to the questions and deal with those and ultimately get a good presentation for you guys. Giving it a few seconds just while some other people are joining in because we're getting the number keeps going up for viewers. So I want to make sure that we give everyone time for that. So to give you guys a look at how this will appear, we've got a nice split screen. And hopefully through this, you guys will be able to better read the slides and we don't have to worry about what it will look like when the slides change and the lighting changes for this. So hopefully when we are all finished, you say, oh, Tony, this was a great idea. But truthfully, if it's not, let me know. I'm happy to go back to the old way and we'll resolve the lighting issue some different way. All right, so with that, and as the viewers are climbing, we'll get started. On this first screen, and as is always going to be true, this is my personal contact information. That is actually my cell phone number. I tell everybody you can reach me anytime, day, night, or weekend. Please reach out. Obviously, there are moments when I am unreachable, right? I'm in trial, in a deposition, or maybe just spending time with my family. Please bug me. I don't mind. If I didn't get back to you and you called me on a Friday afternoon and you want to text me on a Saturday, please do it. I'm completely okay with that. You are never overstepping your bounds trying to reach out to me. I will get back to you. So please reach out anytime you need. So for the series today, we have got what to do after showing your loss. We are going to be focusing on that negotiation process after you show the claim, what you should be doing that can really maximize the value of the loss. As with everything as part of the Perfect Claim series, not every claim is perfect. I always want to put this disclaimer in here because I want everyone to make sure we're on the same page. Just because something wasn't done that is in this series does not mean the claim can be denied, does not mean it should be underpaid, doesn't really mean much if they don't do what's in this series because claims should still be adjusted fairly and properly. So you don't use this as some evidence of, oh, hey, they didn't do what you said they should do. It really has no bearing on the ultimate outcome of how a carrier should pay a claim. This is just meant to be helpful to get us all to the right results faster, more efficiently, and more fairly. All right. So one quick announcement. We've discussed this a few times in the past, but it is starting to fill up. We've gotten some amazing feedback for a conference that I'm putting on with the assistance of Holly Soffer and Mapia. And it is the PAGPS, that's the Public Adjuster Greater Philadelphia Summit. It is going to be in October, right in Cherry Hill, great location, the DoubleTree that does conferences all the time. And there are room blocks available, but those room blocks are beginning to fill up. So if you have not had a chance to join yet and sign up for it, you absolutely should. It is one of, if not the least expensive conference I've ever seen for this industry. It is going to have 10 credits. That is 10 credits for your CEs in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and Maryland. And it is for any Mapia member, only $79. That's it, $79 for 10 credits live for 2 days in October. If you're not a Mapia member, it's still really inexpensive. It's only $179. So If you want to join Mapia and then pay the lower cost, you can absolutely do that. Mapia is a great organization to be part of. We have got amazing speakers lined up for this. We have got one of the 43 certified Xactimate instructors in the world, an actual instructor, not just level 1, 2, or 3. It's above all of that who's going to be coming to give a class on all the issues with Xactimate that you're missing that help resolve claims. We've got a roofing expert who's going to come in to discuss new tech in roofing that helps prove losses to a scientific degree, so that you're not just dealing with, oh, I think it's wear and tear. Oh, no, I think it's hail damage. We actually have scientific ways to now show these things, and he's going to go through that. We have got national adjusters who provide coursework to adjusters all across the country coming in to give a 2-hour course that is kind of a blitz of all the information that you can gather to help adjust these claims faster. One of the most exciting things that we've got coming on are we have the insurance department for Pennsylvania actually participating with two of the employees for the insurance department who are going to come and do a Q&A, so that you can actually speak with them directly and find out exactly what their feeling is on things like your contracts, on how claims are handled, on what insurance company policies are saying. All of that can be brought up. And even more fun for me is going to be a debate and Q&A with a defense attorney who represents insurance companies, so that you guys can ask directly to them as to their representation of the carriers, what their thoughts are, positions, how claims are being handled. I mean, it's really, really going to be great stuff. So I truly cannot stress how great this will be. You want the easiest way to sign up? I created a QR code. Super proud of that. Still using it because I'm so proud of it. And you can go and scan this QR code right now and go to the website. If not, you can go to Mapia.org/PAGPS. Mapia.org/PAGPS. You can sign up right there, register whether you are a member or non-member, and you will get your confirmation, pay right online, make it all real easy for you. So with all that being said, let's jump in. The last time we had one of these lunch and learns, we talked about actually presenting the loss. What does it take to present a claim and get the best outcome as early as possible? The keys of presenting a loss are one of the most important aspects of your entire job as a public adjuster. First impressions matter, right? It's really important to make the right first impression when you meet people. It's the exact same with presenting a loss. You want to make sure that they are seeing the loss kind of through your eyes as you're presenting the claim. So we went over all of that. If you want to learn more, you can always go back on our Facebook, YouTube, or our webpage, wdblegal.com, and get access to those videos for completely free. There's no cost for any of this. We always want to do it to try and give back to the industry. With this class, we have got a few things that we're going to talk about. Really, the main focus of this are going to be the tricks to negotiating a claim. What is proper negotiation techniques? What are some examples of how to use that, and how to use those tricks to resolve claims faster and for better numbers. We are also going to take briefly at what you can do to get faster responses from carriers, because it is one of the biggest complaints in this industry. I've certainly talked about it in prior lunch and learns, but wanted to spend some time here again mentioning it because of how big of a problem it is. So we're going to keep pushing through this. I want to talk about negotiations. And the first stage to negotiations is really understanding empathy. And empathy isn't just about thinking about the other person. It's about actually trying to understand what they are going through as they are going through this process, whether they're having to deal with managers or attorneys on their end, whether they're having to meet certain criteria to show a loss and present a claim to pay for it. Understanding that aspect and understanding their position through it is empathy. And it makes all of the difference when you are trying to negotiate a claim. Empathy doesn't mean that you need to agree with them. It doesn't mean that you need to say, oh, yes, you're right about everything, and go through that process. It's about that understanding. And if you start to think like them, you can start to shift their thought to thinking like you. Just to make sure that's clear. As long as you can start thinking like them, it makes it easier for them to start thinking like you. It's not about the things that you say. It's about how you're saying it. I've said this 1,000 times. You do get more bees with honey than you do vinegar. And when you're presenting losses, you should be taking that mentality. It is so difficult to be mean to someone who is nice to you. It is so difficult to even say no to somebody that you like. So if you can create those relationships, it is the building block for which all of these negotiations will stem from. By the way, one thing I forgot to say that I do say in all of these, if you've got any questions, please throw them over onto the side. We're going to try something a little different on this where I can actually just show comments from fun people like Joe, who liked the dinosaur. Just using this by way of example, but he liked the dinosaur in the QR code, and we can have them actually pop up here on the bottom. So if you do have any questions, please throw them into the comments, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook, and we can get you to pop right up and address the questions while we're going through this. So back into the slides. The demeanor you have in presenting these claims and starting the negotiations really does matter. So don't just go into it with that aggressive tone. You will get more when you are focusing on empathy and focusing on how they are feeling. Where matters. Understanding where you are having the negotiations or where those negotiations are going to take place is really a critical aspect of how you're going to go about doing this. There's a big difference between negotiating with somebody in person versus doing it over email or some other writing campaign. It's even different over the phone versus doing it in person. And I tell everybody, to the extent possible, you want to be doing it in person. I know we are so outside of that realm nowadays that people are so disconnected from one another on a personal level that they just do everything via text or via email, and that it seems easier to be presenting a negotiation by just summarizing your points in letter format and sending it out that way. Letters are incredible. You absolutely should be using them all the time in the adjustment of your claim to document things like your position, losses, investigations, conversations. All of that should be done with a letter campaign. But when it gets to actually negotiating the loss, communicating live with a person is without question the best way. I have negotiated more claims than I could count once they come to lawsuits. And trying to resolve a lawsuit is a arduous process. It can take months. Candidly, it can take years. I have tried it every way under the sun. I would be up for anyone to throw out a way that we haven't tried because I'd be willing to try it to see if it works better. But bar none, every time, if I can be in person with the powers that be, whoever the decision maker is, I have a far better opportunity to settle that case than if I was doing it via an email or letter campaign of some sort. So if you can do it in person, absolutely do it in person. If you can do it at the first inspection, even better. There is a driving factor to some adjusters and some carriers to get claims off of their plates quickly. Now, the carrier might want to push back and say, no, we want to do the delay, deny, defend aspect. And that's going to happen. And we're going to talk about how to deal with that. But if you can come to an agreement at the very first inspection, you're going to be flying through these claims so that you're not sitting there worrying about those follow-ups and all those other issues that are going to come up. So as soon as you can, try and get these claims resolved and do it in person. We deal with the same adjusters over and over again. And you're going to have inspections maybe this week with one inspector from Allstate, and then you're going to see them again 2 weeks later at another loss. Well, use that as an opportunity to bring up the other claim and say, hey, we inspected this loss 2 weeks ago. I wanted to have a chance to just sit down. We've got this inspection coming up. Can you just reserve like 5 or 10 minutes to make sure your schedule is free so we can talk about it? That will go a long, long way. And it really helps resolve these claims. So we've talked about the how and the empathy. We need to focus on the why. Why might sound simple, right? Why are you negotiating a claim? Well, you're negotiating it to try and get it resolved for the best results for your insured. But really, negotiations and the large focus of negotiations is focusing on information gathering. That you're trying to just gain information before numbers even come up. Numbers should be really the last aspect of negotiating any loss. And the reason being is if you guys can get to an agreement as to the scope of the loss, what the cause was, where what rooms and what items are damaged, you will have a much better opportunity when the time comes for that number to ultimately resolve the claim. So when you start negotiating these, you want to focus on gathering as much information as you can from the other side so you know all of their positions, all of their points. And when that negotiation for a number starts, you've got an answer to all of it. You really need to listen to what they're going to say. I know we've all got this assumption, and I am guilty of this as much as anybody, that I know what they're going to end up telling me before they tell me, right? I know we're going to go in and they're going to tell me it is wear and tear to that roof and that the granule loss is just from time and not from a hailstorm. Or I know that I'm going to go in and they're going to tell me that this water leak was going on for more than 14 days. But I still want to hear them tell me it. And it really is something I need to constantly remind myself, because what you'll find is that you're going to pick up on nuances of what they're focusing on to make that point. It's not the overall point that matters so much. It's what are they focusing on to be able to say that. So, for example, they come in and they say, oh, this water leak is clearly a long-term leak. It was going on for more than 14 days. Look at this rot. Well, that throwaway at the end of look at this rot is the most important thing they said, because we know that that's the basis of their statement. And when you start to negotiate, you can have ready with you an article on how rot can't be dated, that rot could be 30 years old sitting in that ceiling, and it just got wet again from this most recent leak, but it has nothing to do with the leak. The mere presence of other damage doesn't negate a covered loss. So there could be rot there all day long, but if there's new damage from it being wet, or the surrounding floor getting wet, or the ceiling, all of that is still covered regardless of old 30-year-old rot in the claim. So listening to what they actually have to say will get you closer, because you'll know how to respond to it. If you think about it like a game of cards, right? When you're playing cards and you're playing poker and you need to make a hand, the more cards you could have, the easier it would be to make that hand, right? It's easier to make a pair if I have 10 cards versus if I only have 3 cards. That is the information game that we're dealing with negotiations. Is the more information you have, the easier it actually becomes to negotiate a loss, because you've got more ammunition on your end and ways to respond to it than they do. So really focus on that. Some techniques when it comes to negotiating a claim I want to go through with you. And we're going to talk about a few of them as we go through this, but all of them can actually be really successful. And it's one of those things that I didn't believe until I started doing it in my negotiations, that it actually works. And one of the hardest ones for me to both remember to implement and actually believe worked was this first one called mirroring. Mirroring is simply the trick of repeating what they have told you, usually the last 3 or 4 words at the start of what you say, to transition their thought into your thought. I'm going to say that again just to make it sure it's clear. Mirroring is the use of their own words, usually the last 3 or 4 words of whatever they said to you, at the start of what you say, so that you can transition their thoughts into your thoughts. What do I mean by that? So if you've got an example where you're talking with a public adjuster, or I'm sorry, an insurance adjuster for a carrier, and they say that phrase of, this was a long-term leak, look at all this rot. You say, well, looking at this rot, I can't tell how old that rot really is. And that you've transitioned them saying, looking at this rot, to you saying, looking at this rot, and just using that exact language to transition their thought. A lot of people compare this to like a Jedi mind trick. I know that's cheesy, but it actually is true. If you start mimicking what they are doing, or mirroring what they are doing, you actually start to bring them in to speaking like you, to thinking like you, which is one of the best things that could ever happen in a negotiation. It is such a small trick, and it is something that people don't realize is happening. If someone did this to me, I probably wouldn't know that they're doing it, because it's just so ingrained in the conversation that it happens almost automatically. And it's something that does take conscious effort on your behalf until this just becomes natural. So you really need to constantly be reminding yourself, oh, in this negotiation, if I'm having this debate about something, let me mirror, and just remember that. And use silence to your advantage. It is amazing, absolutely amazing, how much more you can gain from somebody if you use silence to your advantage. And attorneys truly are masters at this. What they will do in a deposition is they will ask a question, a relatively simple one, might be a little open ended, and they will use silence constantly. So, for example, the defense attorney might ask a homeowner, where was all of the damage in your property? And they might start off and just say, oh, it was upstairs and downstairs. And they will just be quiet. The attorney won't fill in the silence. And because silence is so awkward for everybody, somebody will break. Somebody will fill that gap. And a lot of times it's the untrained person. It is the person being deposed that will fill that silence. You can use the same exact trick for your side when you're talking to an adjuster to try to explain their point. Because remember, you're always trying to gather information, right? You're always trying to get as much as you can from them. So if you use silence, let them keep explaining until there's nothing left to explain. And you know that at that point you've pulled as much as you can out of them from whatever question you asked or whatever comment you made. It really can make a big difference. Another great tool is one that I think I talked about last week, is anchoring. Anchoring is the process of using extremes to set a more reasonable expectation down the line. What I mean by that is if you go into a loss and just in conversation, or maybe your first phone call with the insurance company, when you report the claim, you make a passing statement, right? And say, oh my God, this is really crazy. This is going to be $100,000 to fix this. Now, in your head, you might know, look, this is 50,000 on its best day, but you've created an extreme anchor in their mind to say, okay, I now know where their bar is set. I now know that we are set at that $100,000 mark, so I need to chop them down from there. And in their mind, they might think, look, if I chop them down 50% on a claim, that's a huge win. Great. And now they're already, before anything goes any further, already thinking that the 50%, $50,000 number is the place to go. So it can make a big difference if you just set that anchor in your initial phone call or initial conversation with the insurance company or adjuster. One of the things we've talked about in the past is how important it is to set reserves. And having the carrier set proper reserves is, truly one of the tricks of the game. If you can get a proper reserve set by the carrier that you don't have to later overcome or write at a higher number. So when you have that initial report to the carrier and you call in the loss, you make that passing comment, and that's something that gets transitioned into a higher reserve. You've now already created a hurdle or removed a hurdle that you might have later on. So using anchoring makes a big difference. You truly should use it in every single claim. I can't think of a scenario in the legal world nowadays where anchoring isn't used by either myself or the attorney on the other side. And it happens constantly, right? I've got a $1 million loss. The insurance company comes in and says, I'll offer $15,000 to settle it, right? They are anchoring in some ridiculously low number. Now, luckily, this is a trick that once you know that they are doing it, you can help combat it. But what's really interesting, I deal with the same attorneys over and over and over again, and they deal with me. And all the studies still show that when you anchor, even if someone knows you are anchoring, that there is a subliminal side to it that still assists in the negotiation of the loss, that still helps you just in a subconscious nature get to a better number in the end, because you just can't combat that side of the subconscious. So you should use that anchoring really in every claim, even if it's the same adjuster over and over. I wouldn't do the anchor in writing if you can avoid it from your perspective. And what I mean by that is you don't want to be writing high estimates and presenting that estimate as the amount of loss for the purposes of setting an anchor. So what you need is an actual conversation, some interaction of what your anchor should be, not that estimate. I can't stress this enough. It is so important never to be presenting an estimate that is inflated and can't be justified based off of the loss. Whatever your estimate is should be your estimate throughout the entirety of this thing. It is not to use as an anchor. So make sure that you're doing it in some other form. Now, if you wanted to put it in writing in passing, I haven't done my estimate yet, but I think this could be, $100,000. That's completely okay. That is different than presenting a loss for an inflated number. You don't want to get yourself into that boat of presenting an actual claim amount that is inflated or too high. All right. So, taking a look further, we've got anchoring. Sorry, the slide didn't switch. The other aspect of what you can do, and this one really works wonders too. All of these, by the way, every aspect, every tool here is something I've personally used and can verify as being successful. The accusation audit. This is something that I learned, and a lot of these are from a book that I'm going to recommend at the end called Never Split the Difference. It is a fantastic book on negotiation, but I want to do this because reading the book is great and you should read it. But if you don't have time, having these summaries can make all the difference. An accusation audit is all about putting the blame on you early on for whatever the starting point, whatever the position is that you're trying to take. And you're accusing yourself in front of the other person and saying, look, I know what I'm about to do, what I'm about to say, it's crazy, right? You're going to walk the examples I have here. When we finish here today, you're going to think I am a terrible adjuster, right? And actually saying that makes a mental difference in how they perceive you as a person adjusting the claim. Because what it does is it actually sets their expectations for what you're about to say and takes the sting off before they ever even hear it. So that all of a sudden, when you say, look, you're going to think I'm absolutely crazy and that I'm ludicrous and off my rocker for what I'm going to be telling you when we're done this inspection. Just wanted to recognize, I know that. I wanted you to know that. So that all of a sudden, when you come in the end and say, look, I think this is going to be $100,000 when I do the estimate, it takes the sting off of that number and actually lowers their defenses. You really need to try to do this because anytime you can remove that sting, remove that defensive nature that they're going to have, you're going to have a better negotiation. Your goal is going to be to anchor them emotionally, prepare them with this accusation audit for whatever you present later on. That's really what you're going on. Using the accusation audit, in tandem with the anchoring can really make a big difference in these claims. So you also need to understand the barriers that they have put up on their end. And this aspect is something you probably do already, but maybe not to a degree that's necessary because you're not presenting it in a way that allows them to remove those barriers. But you've got to ask yourself, why is the adjuster not approving this claim? Why are they not paying for the entirety of the hardwood floor when clearly it is continuous through this area and they just want to try and do a patch repair and be satisfied with that? Or why are they refusing to pay for the entirety of this roof when we've got 75 damaged shingles over multiple slopes and it's 40 years old, right? Ask those questions and try and figure out from the adjuster for State Farm, for Allstate, why they are taking this position. And if you can start to understand those barriers, the reason that they are doing those things, you will have a much better opportunity to respond and knock that barrier down. So, for example, if you've got a claim for that roof, right? 75 damaged shingles, the roof is 40 years old, multiple slopes are affected, you want a replacement, and State Farm wants to patch it. Now, State Farm has been atrocious when it comes to roofs. We all know that. We know that they've been absolutely terrible because they're just refusing at the get-go to do replacements of the roof. They want to try and see you make an attempted repair. They want all of this other stuff. So if you start to have a conversation with the adjuster who you've got a good relationship with because you haven't been hostile, you haven't been aggressive, you've just done your job as an adjuster and presented it faithfully, but you don't have to be mean about it. And you start to figure out, hey, what's going on here? Why is it that you're not able to pay for this? You paid for it, a month ago on that prior loss we were on. What's going on? And they can start to say, well, look, we've got these orders from up on high. We can't pay the roof without X, Y, and Z. Okay, great. Well, now for the first time, you've gained information, right? You've gained that they need X, Y, and Z things if they're going to pay for a roof. Great. So let's see if I can get those for you, right? Do you need a roofer to come out and do a report? Let me get that for you. Whatever it takes, you're gaining that information throughout the course of this negotiation. It does wonders if you can just get them to start talking about what those barriers are, or if you can somehow find out what those barriers are so that you can overcome that. Maybe the issue is, oh, I've got this manager who's breathing down my neck. I think this is covered, but I know he'll never approve it, and as a result, I got to deny this. I'm so sorry. Well, now you know where the barrier is, right? The barrier is not your adjuster. The barrier is the next one up, and now you can start your communications directly with them, right? Knowing those types of things can make a really big difference in how you go about presenting the remainder of the loss. The best word in all of negotiations is no. It's a really fantastic word if you can use it the right way. And again, it doesn't need to be aggressive. It doesn't need to be said as just a hard and fast no. That's not what you need to do. What you're using no for is an opportunity for them to be bidding against themselves, an opportunity for them to be giving you more information. And how you say no can make all the difference in what the next step is on behalf of the carrier. So I gave some examples here of how you can say no without just saying no. I appreciate you providing that estimate, but I can't agree to that, right? You said no. And you can use silence here, right? If you're having the live conversation like we've talked about, say, look, I'm sorry, I can't agree to that. Just let it sit. Even like 2 seconds of me sitting here in silence in the room by myself felt terrible. Now, I imagine if you're sitting anywhere that has any kind of level of silence, it would have felt just as awkward, even for 2 seconds, with me sitting there saying nothing. Now, imagine if I were to do that with an adjuster for 5 or 10 seconds of just, hey, what are you going to say to this? They're probably going to fill that void. And when they fill the void, they're going to try to explain or provide some basis as to why you shouldn't be saying no, right? Well, look, this is the best I can do. It's based off of Xactimate numbers, and I'm locked in. Okay, great. Now I've learned something new. I know that this is what they're locking into because it's based off of Xactimate. And you can come back and say, well, look, we all know Xactimate can be a great tool, but we've got a contractor here who's the one who's actually willing to do the work. Do you have any contractor who can support this? And use that question to keep moving this forward so that you get to the better result. It's always about gaining that information. Another great way. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't do that. Right? A little more straightforward than the one above that, but still a great way. That doesn't work for me. And another easy way to say no. But the best option is the last one I have here. It's where you use no to also create a question. You say, how am I supposed to do that? Right? Or some variation. How am I supposed to tell the homeowner that all they're getting is 25 shingles on their roof that was completely consistent before and is 30 years old and can't be patched? How do I do that? How do I explain that to them? Right? You're saying no, right? Because you're clearly saying that you're not in agreement, but you're also opening the door to gain more information. And when you put the onus on the other side to have to explain this stuff to things like homeowners, to the property owners, it becomes a lot harder for them. And it's one of the reasons doing this in person is so great. Now, there's something that I'm thinking about now. Truly, it's one of the first times I've thought about it, but is using the homeowner as almost ammunition against these conversations with the adjusters. Now, generally, good rule of thumb, you don't want homeowners talking to the insurance company directly. And I stand by that to this moment. But it's different if the homeowner knows, look, don't say a word. I just want you standing next to me. That's it. I just want you there. I want you there because I'm going to put pressure on this State Farm adjuster. And I want them to be in a place where they know they're speaking to you too, not just me. That I'm not just a middleman. They've got to look you in the eye and say this. So you can use that opportunity when you're live and having this conversation to have the homeowner standing right there and put extra pressure on them to make these statements. And I bet that will get you a better result on a few of these claims. It might not work every time, I find some of the adjusters for the carriers to be heartless computers, but nevertheless, I think sometimes it could actually get through. I'd be curious if you guys have any opinions on using that type of tactic to get a different response out of adjusters. Questions will win claims. There's a few things that I say that about, right? Photographs win claims. Videos certainly can win claims. Evidence wins claims. But truly, questions can be one of your best tools to winning a claim and negotiating. When you're trying to gather information, questions are obviously the best way, right? You're asking a question, you're giving no information yourself, but you're trying to gather information from them. Remember, that information are the decks of the card. It allows them to get their answer out, and it allows them to talk and explain. And a lot of people want that. A lot of people want that feeling of, oh, I want to explain my claim. I want to explain my position. I want you to understand I'm right and you're wrong, and here's why. And if you give them that pedestal with questions, they will often be using it. It goes a long way with questions because you can use logic to get them to your position. You will very rarely, if not never, win a claim by telling the other side that they are wrong and you are right, and here's why you're right. It just doesn't work. It is not the way to get people to start thinking like you. You need to realize they have to get to the answer themselves. That's the trick here, guys. That is the magic. If anybody wants the magic key to ultimately being successful in negotiations, it is getting the other side to think like you think. And the absolute best way to do that, bar none, is through questions. And all it takes is one question, one fact at a time. And if you walk them through the steps with questions where they're answering them and say, let's talk about a few things. You'd agree with me that, hail can cause granule loss to a roof, right? Yeah, I agree with you on that. And you'd agree with me, granules, they're more than just aesthetic, right? They do have a functional quality to the roof. They help protect it. They help reflect the sunlight. They create longer longevity of the shingles and a number of other aspects. You'd agree with that too, right? Yeah, I'd agree with that. And walk them through step by step to, okay, once you get all that, once they've realized all the steps that your brain is going through to get you to coverage, their brain will start to trip over and say, wait, maybe that's right. Maybe once I realize that, once I go through the steps in that fashion, maybe I do get to coverage. And it can make all of the difference in the world. That logical step of one question, one fact at a time will get you miles further in a ton of negotiations. The how questions are always going to be your best questions, right? How can you do this? How do you justify this position? And once you can do that, once you start using those how questions, it allows them to explain more and provide more information to you without having to give up any of that information to them. So for example, I wanted to give examples on these because I think these work almost every time. What would I need to give you or show you to justify your paying for X? I mean, this is one of the best questions that could ever be asked in a claim, right? What do you need to justify this claim? And you're going to learn one of two things. Either they're going to say there's nothing you could give me, and now you've got great ammunition against them because they're literally closing themselves off to any possibility of coverage despite what evidence is out there. Or you're actually going to get a real answer as to, look, you want this wood floor covered? I need a wood flooring expert to come in and say it can't be repaired and tell me why. Fine, you got it. I will absolutely get that for you. No problem. You'll have it in a week. And if you get that information from them, you've got a ton more opportunity to resolve these claims. Another great one. What is preventing you from paying? Why? Now, that question is so fantastic because it gets back to what we talked about earlier with the boundaries that they've got, right? What are the walls that are up in their face, that are in their way from paying for a claim? So you've used a question to try and get that information out of them. Would there be any benefit to me speaking directly to you, to your inside, I'm sorry, that should be your inside adjuster for approval, so you don't need to be the bad guy asking for more money? right? A lot of people just don't want to be the ones to go up and have to make that ask for more money, even if they think it's justified. So this is a great opportunity for you to say, look, can I go? Is there someone I can talk to that makes it easier for you, right? That you don't have to deal with this personally because you're just going to have to go to them and be the middleman. Those questions can go a really long way. Would you be willing to change your position if we can get a neutral third party to evaluate this? Another great question, one that can head off things like appraisal, can resolve issues before litigation so you don't have to send things to me. But these are great ways to ultimately get a resolution from these claims, from these adjusters in an amicable way that gets everybody satisfied in the end. Now, that covers a lot of aspects of negotiation. There are a ton more. There are more books than you can count on how to negotiate losses. And you should be reading them. It's an area that you might feel like, oh, I've got a real good knack at doing this. But truth is, some of the people on this webinar right now aren't the best negotiators. Letters that I've seen written by you are aggressive. They use all caps or bolds a lot. They are more interested in showing how right you are and not focusing so much on what the other side is thinking or why they're doing what they're doing. So everybody, myself included, needs as many of these books and as many of these lessons as they can get to make sure we're doing the best job we can in this industry. So the other aspect, though, that I wanted to focus on today was getting faster responses from insurance companies. And there's only so many things you can do, right? We know that there are books, that Delay, Deny, Defend being kind of the quintessential example of this, of carriers wanting to slow things down. And I get it. And you're not going to be able to stop it on every claim. It's just not going to happen. But there are things you can do to help speed that process up on some of the claims. Just like with negotiating, it's not going to work every time, right? You're not going to always get the result. And sometimes you're going to have to do things like send it to appraisal or file suit against the carrier. But when it does work, it's worth it. The first thing you should be doing is putting your demands, your requests, your information in writing. I say this over and over, and I say it on purpose because there is a rare adjuster out there. Rarely will I get a file and I said, oh, they've put enough in writing. They've done enough that I feel good about what they've done in writing, and all is well with the world. I mean, there are times when I will get a file from an adjuster and there will not be a single letter or a single email in their file sent to the carrier on the other side. Not one. Now, that is the first stage to getting things done faster because you're documenting it and you can reference that documentation later. So you want to be putting all of the important stuff down in writing as the claim is proceeding. And what you want to be putting in writing are things like the citations to rules. I'm jumping to number 3 here. But you want to be things like the citations to rules. And when I say rules, I'm talking about either rules within the policy or rules within the state law or codes, like the Unfair Claims Practices Act. Citing to those things and putting that cite in there, it's not practicing law. It's stuff that they candidly, under most Unfair Claims Practice Acts, must, as a matter of law, be familiar with. So you're just putting it to the forefront of a letter. But by putting it in writing, you're giving them notice, and you're going to be able to cite back to that notice. And one of the reasons you need to be citing back to that notice and all of that law is because one of the things that you can use is the insurance departments to help push claims forward. Now, do you know that there are timelines set for how quickly claims need to be resolved? Almost every Unfair Insurance Practice Act that I've ever seen has some provision of a claim must be resolved within, let's say, 30 days. You're going to say, Tony, you're nuts. You're crazy. Most of my claims are not resolved within 30 days. So are you telling me that every insurance company out there is violating the Unfair Insurance Practices Act? My answer is maybe. There is a caveat. They're allowed to take more than 30 days if it's reasonable, and they give you an explanation as to why. But if they're not doing that, if they're not providing that written explanation and providing that reasonable explanation, then they could very well be in violation of the Unfair Insurance Practices Act. And there's one thing I know for sure. Notifying the insurance department, at a minimum, we'll get a response out of the carrier to the insurance department and give an explanation. So if it does nothing to actually resolve a claim, it will do something to help push a response out from the carrier. It takes time. I wish it were a faster process, but it at least gets the response when you are being bombarded with silence. So using that information, using the whatever you've put in writing, your citations to the rules, making the claim to the department can make a really big difference. Another thing that helps a ton are having regular and systematic follow-ups. There are a ton of software programs out there that will allow you automatic letter generation, right? Where you can literally press a button and it will be your follow-up letter template, and you pop it out and you're good to go. Using those will be really fantastic to help these get better responses out of carriers. There's a reason they have the old phrase about the squeaky wheel. It does get oiled. So if you become the squeaky wheel with your systematic letter and email follow-up, you're good to go. Another tool, this came up at a Mapia meeting and was suggested by Sarah Parker, who's an incredible adjuster out west. And she said, use social media. It's a tool that I'd never thought about using before. But if you have your clients go onto social media and do public complaints on the State Farm Facebook page, on their Instagram, on their Twitter, and you put those complaints out there, you will almost always be getting a faster response than you will if you're trying to go directly through the adjuster. They have entire teams that deal purely with social media management. And they have processes that are in place, internal guidelines as to if a complaint is done, this is how fast we must respond and address the issue. Because they want that forward-facing information of social media terrifies them. They're afraid of it because they realize if all of us did it, if all of us realize this, if all of us figure out the power of social media, the power that can actually give us as the consumer, the victim, it could completely destroy them. I mean, it's one of the reasons that companies like Farmers don't actually underwrite the claims so often. They're underwritten by Truck Insurance Exchange or some other company. Do you know why they're doing that? They're doing it because it allows people who go to search for Farmers to not find the 300 lawsuits that we have filed in the past 5 years against Truck Insurance Exchange, because I have to file it against Truck versus filing it against Farmers. They are afraid of what is publicly accessible. So using social media is a tool that everybody on this webinar should be using to help push claims when they're not getting responses and not getting the results they need. Those aspects make a really big difference. Another thing that you can do is actually address your letters and your emails to all of the interested parties, right? So often we try to lock in and focus on one person who is kind of the forefront of the claim. But there is so much that happens behind the scenes. And if you start to include those higher ups, the managers on the file or those managers, you can find that you'll be getting much better responses and much faster responses from the carrier from the get-go. It also helps to be including CCing the insured on every communication and making sure that they are kept apprised of this, not only to cover yourself so that they know you're working for them and working hard to try to get this resolved, but again, it does create some accountability to the carrier directly. All of these things are aspects of a claim that can be used to make sure that you are getting the best and fastest results from the carriers. Now, it's not always going to work. There's no magic button that you get to push. So when these negotiations do break down, there are a number of options. And all you need to do to find that out is tune in next time for our next Lunch and Learn, and we can go through that. Now, I want to address the questions. As always, I answer every question that is posed when people register or any questions that come up on the side. Now, I've been trying to pay attention here, and I don't believe there have been any questions that have come up yet. I do appreciate Mark Jacoby, who's indicated that these issues with State Farm, based off of what he has seen, is that they've actually lost their authority to fully approve claims for roofing from the get-go as a result of internal management issues. It was a directive that came down from what you're being told. Now, I actually believe that. I've heard it myself, so I do think that that is accurate. But what I do know from experience from adjusters that I work very closely with is that you can get roofs fully approved. It is not a full stop. It is an initial stop. It is a barrier, and it's a barrier that you have to overcome. So if you have any questions to go through before I jump into these, please feel free to type them in. I will address them as we go through this. Just before I get into that, this is the book that you're going to want to look for if you want even more detail about some of the stuff we talked about today. Never Split the Difference, written by Chris Voss, he's an ex-negotiator for the CIA and FBI. He's done training all across the world as for negotiations, and it's a must read for anybody that deals with negotiations in this. I actually just gave a copy of it to a new associate at my office because of how valuable I truly believe this book is. So with that, one other thing that I do always want to mention are the adjuster associations. If you're not part of the Public Adjusting Association, you should be. And it does not have to be MAPIA. MAPIA is one that I'm involved with and I truly stand by, but it doesn't have to be MAPIA. The truth is these organizations do a ton of great things. MAPIA gives you live CE credits when you do either breakfasts, lunches, or dinners together as a group where you can get live CE credits as completely free part of your membership. We do a nice holiday party at the end of the year where yours truly gets to supply all the drinks for you, so you get to kind of relax with other people in the industry. There is live Q&A with myself and any of our guest speakers that we have come to these events, which can add a ton of value. One of the best things about the Q&A is an opportunity for you guys to actually communicate and talk about what's working and what's not working in the industry. So we really want to push these because it does a lot of good. But one of the absolute best things that these organizations do is to fund lobbyists. If you don't know this, insurance companies have nearly endless funds. And when they have those endless funds, they pay for lobbyists to provide a lot of money and information to the local and federal governments, so that regulation is generally going to be in their favor. Well, MAPIA has one of the best lobbyists in the country that works with them to head off a lot of those issues so that we don't see a lot of the problems that other states see because we've got a good lobbyist. So it makes a ton, and it's like $300 for a year. So you really have no reason not to be doing this. So taking a look now at the questions. The first one that had come up is a really easy one, actually, is how do you watch the 7 sessions or the prior 7 sessions? They are on YouTube. They're also on our website, wdblegal.com. But every webinar we've ever done is still on Facebook. So you can always go back on Facebook. You do not have to have a Facebook account. You can literally type in WDB Legal Facebook on Google, and it'll bring you to our page, and you can watch the videos that way. And you should be going back. I absolutely think it's a worthwhile thing to go through all of those prior classes. What can be done when an adjuster requests bills to determine residency, then refuses to acknowledge the utility bills and does not accept or deny coverage? Are they delaying the process to avoid a suit? They very well might be delaying a process to avoid suit, but more likely they're just delaying because they know they're going to ultimately have to pay. Again, this comes down to the squeaky wheel. If you are not getting a response and you followed up with written correspondence documenting that you have tried to get a response out of them and provided this information, that is your next stage to get the insurance department involved and to contact them and say, look, I've contacted them 6 times. Here are my correspondence. They refuse to respond or provide any coverage position on this claim. Most unfair claims practice acts require an explanation as to why the claim has not yet been resolved every 45 days. If you're not getting that 45-day response letter with some reasonable explanation, then they are failing in their responsibilities. And it is not enough to just say, we're reviewing the information or we're waiting on documentation. They need to have some specificity as to what they're waiting on, because they need to give you an opportunity to give that to them. So this happens constantly, and this is one of those delays that you can hopefully resolve with some of those issues we talked about earlier. One question that came up from Mark Jacoby: is there consequences for social media shaming based on factual citations? Number one rule of thumb is there is no liability created by truth. So if you are speaking truth, if you're citing to their own letter and you're putting it on there, if you are talking about things that are factually accurate, there is absolutely no consequence that could be out there for that. So what you have to be careful of is lying, right? You don't want any falsehoods that could be considered defamation or libel. So you want to make sure that what you're saying is factually accurate. But generally, as long as you do that, there shouldn't be any consequence concerns that you've got. The next one we've got over here. Can State Farm demand the client do an, quote, attempt to repair, end quote, to the roof when there is nothing written in the conditions? Roof has 39 wind damaged shingles and is 20 to 35 years old. Fantastic question, because this one is coming up constantly. I honestly, I feel like I've had to answer this more times than I can count for the roof. And the answer is no, they cannot demand that you attempt a repair to the roof. If they want to send somebody out to attempt to repair, arguably they could do it. But there's no way they're going to do that because they don't want the increased liability. What your best answer is in this scenario is through some easy Googling or YouTubing. You can find videos of attempted repairs in similar situations. Roofers have become pretty tech savvy with YouTube and put a lot of videos up there. One of my favorites, for example, there's a great video explaining the difference between metric and standard measurements on shingles, why you can't use them to patch anymore when you've got that older roof. So find a roof in similar condition and a repair attempt in a similar condition in a prior video and use that and say, look, State Farm, my client's not willing to damage their roof further with an attempted repair, and the roofer's not willing to do it, but I do want to provide you some additional evidence. So here is a video showing an attempted repair in a similar situation and why it cannot work. So that is usually going to be your best available response for this. Just taking a look here on the side, if there were any questions. So again, Mark's chiming in. We're aware of the viral video of State Farm rejecting coverage for an expired roof. Can we repost? Absolutely. There's no reason it can't be reposted. It's like there was an article that's been taken down. I have it saved if you're ever interested. It was a blog post by a defense firm that talked all about how delaying claims is the best avenue for insurance companies. It was one of the most disgusting posts I've ever seen written for the insurance industry. But it literally talks about taking advantage of low-income people, taking advantage of people who are going through catastrophic events. I mean, it was absolutely disgusting. But things like that can absolutely be reposted without question. So, are there any legal or policy stipulations regarding how long a carrier has to respond? Yes. Almost every state has a 10-day rule for substantive responses to documents to pertinent communications. That's the term that is generally used under the Unfair Claims Practice Act. So all you really need to do is just confirm that it's a pertinent communication and that you're expecting a response. Every letter that I draft that I want an actual written response contains that language. It says this is a pertinent communication to which a response is demanded within 10 business days as required by state law. That sentence will do wonders, do absolute wonders for you to actually get a response from the carrier, because their failure to do that is really a big no-no and one of the things that the insurance departments hate to see. Another great question that came up from John. Since New Jersey is a one-party recording state, do you recommend recording site meetings? And have you been successful using these videos for settlement purposes? Absolutely can record them. There's no hesitation in my mind anymore. Given what I've seen carriers do, truthfully, videos make a world of difference. I actually have an ongoing bad faith case against an insurance carrier in Ohio because the roofer that was doing the site inspection with the carrier adjuster to show the damage was recording, and it shows the roofer for the insurance company damaging the shingles when they were lifting, trying to do an inspection. It was to the point, I mean, this was an old roof. It's a great video where the roofer for the insurance company had his whole arm under a shingle, bending it up to try and take a picture underneath of whatever was showing. Well, when that shingle came back down, all of a sudden it was creased and was clearly broken. Well, the carrier comes out and denies the claim, saying it looks like there's man-made mechanical damage to the roof, and thus we think that this is fraud and not covered. Well, they didn't realize that they were being videotaped, and we now have the evidence to show that it was their own person. So we present this to them, and they don't change their position. I mean, it's absolutely crazy in this loss, because we have photographs of that area before he did the inspection. No crease, no damage. After he puts it down, the crease is there, and the shingle is broken. So it can make a big difference having that type of evidence, and it can create a big success in how these claims are handled and resolved. Taking a look, what are the best software tools on the market for templates and letter writing? So this is something that I've brought up in a few different classes, all the way back to actually the Perfect Claim Part 1, about having the right management software for your office, because there's a ton out there. I think Claims Wizard is probably the biggest one that I'm aware of. I certainly don't know all of the software out there, but I know Claim Wizard has a template system. I personally use a program called Practice Panther. While it was initially designed for law firms, I've seen a few different public adjusters who have also used Practice Panther, because it's so easy and intuitive and candidly inexpensive to use. It has great template writing tools. It has workflows that allow you to have automatic follow-ups, so that you're triggered and you get a notice of, hey, it's been 10 days, you should be doing a follow-up letter. There's really great tools for Practice Panther that I can't suggest highly enough for this industry. Claims Wizard and things designed for public adjusting and the insurance industry are good because they're kind of customized for insurance. But the truth is that even something generalized like Practice Panther can be just as strong a tool, because do you really care if the title of your section is claims versus matters, right? Things like that just doesn't make a big difference. And let's see, I think there's one other question on here. Nope, that was the blank one to tell me it's the end. One more time, this is the QR code. Truly, if you haven't signed up for PAGPS, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but you should be signing up. It is a great program, and it's going to be here before you know it. It's the first week of October, on the 6th and the 7th. So get signed up and get involved with it. You absolutely will feel a benefit. I can nearly guarantee that. I'll be running it myself with Holly Soffer, so you'll have direct communication to us throughout the entirety of it. If you have any other further questions, you got about 60 seconds to put them in there, because otherwise, I just want to say thank you to everybody. As always, I appreciate you joining these. I really want to try and give back so that this industry grows as a whole, because the more unified we are on our side, the better opportunities we're going to have to make sure the carriers are paying for what they're paying. If you've got any further questions or need me directly, that is my cell phone, my direct email, and our website. Please feel free to reach out. And again, bug me. I'm not perfect. I will miss a text. I will miss a call or a voicemail. So please do not hesitate to follow up. I am here to help whenever I can. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.